Torah. What did he mean? I mean, it's natural. I don't have to overcome it. So I'm not really getting a reward like you are by overcoming and not doing what you want to do. It's from the greatest things possible. There was an individual that was dating a non-Jewish girl. And he went to speak to every single rabbi, and every rabbi tried to convince him out of it. Wasn't successful. Someone told him that he should go to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He came to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he told the Rebbe the way it is. I'm dating this girl, I'm in love. One problem, she's not Jewish. So the Rebbe didn't start giving him a speech. You should know if you're going to marry her, who knows what's going to happen, you're going to burn and what? No. That's not what the Rebbe told him. The Rebbe looked at him, and the Rebbe told him, I'm jealous from you that you have such a big nisayon, such a big test. He had a huge test. Why was such a huge test? He really wanted to marry the girl. He knew it was wrong, but he really wanted to marry her. So the Rebbe said, I'm jealous from you that you have such a great test. Avraham Avinu was tested by God. Not every person has that test. And guess what? After he gave it some thought, he decided not to marry her. Why? Because he realized that this was perhaps the challenge that he came down to this world to begin with for. So when you look at someone else, you say, why is it that this person doesn't have any temptations? Why is it that this person is not hot-blooded like me? Never gets angry. By me, if someone looks at me the wrong way, I lose it. It's not fair. I'm sad, I'm depressed. Every day I have to struggle with anger. Every day I have to struggle with laziness. Or every day I have to struggle with keeping my thoughts clean or keeping my eyes clean. I can't deal with it anymore. So a person has to realize by looking like that, you're not realistic. Don't look at someone else. Perhaps that person's mission in life was only to do the proper things and to begin with in the right way. Your mission from God is that you should overcome the challenge. There's a very famous story of the great tzaddik, Rabbi Zusha of Anapol. Anapol is a small little city, shtetl in Ukraine. Rabbi Zusha once told his students, I'm not scared after 120 years when I die, I'm going to come up to the heavenly court and they're going to say, Rabbi Zusha, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? Why weren't you like Moses? He said, I'm not scared. I have the answers prepared. You're comparing me to Moses. Moses spoke to God whenever he wanted. Moses was the greatest prophet that ever lived. Moses was the one that took the Jews out of Egypt. Moses was the one that got the Torah. You're comparing me to Moshe? And I know they're going to say, yeah, you got a good case? Dismissed. You're fine. He says, I'm not scared after 120. They're going to ask me, how come I wasn't like Avraham Avinu, Abraham, the first Jew? You compare me to the first Jew. What do you want from me? Did you reveal himself? Did God reveal himself? And he says, I know you're right. He says, there's only one question that I'm scared of they're going to ask me after 120. And that is, how come I wasn't like Zusha? That was his name. How come I wasn't the way I was supposed to? Each and every one of us have our own challenges. Each and every one of us is unique. The question that we must ask ourselves is, not why did God give us this challenge? We know why God gave us this challenge, to overcome it. And every person has challenges in their lives. Trust me. I have yet to meet a person that told me, Rabbi, my life is perfect. I have 0 challenges. Yes, some have more challenges than others. Some have challenges in every field of their life. It could be health, it could be wealth, it could be financial problems, it could be no inner peace, and so on and so forth. But every single person has challenges in their lives. And since every person has challenges in their life, it depends on us how we look at it. If we look at it as a challenge, then what happens when you know a challenge is coming your way? And then it comes. You're prepared for it. And therefore what? You know how to handle it. If you don't know the challenge is coming and you look at it, oh, why is it happening? Why? Obviously you can get upset. Obviously you can get sad. So when a person doesn't think that they deserve, that God should give them a challenge, obviously you can get upset. But the reality in life is God made every single person with temptations. And therefore we have to realize that every time that we go ahead and we don't fulfill this temptation, we are doing what God wants from us. Based on this, the Alter Rebbe explains what it says. But Eve was a man that suffered. Not getting into the whole story of Eve. He was a man that suffered in every aspect. If you think you had a hard life, You can read the book of Eve, and you see how he really had a hard life. So one of the times that he was complaining to God, he said, it's not fair. It's not fair. He said, Barasar Hashem, you created wicked men. So what do you want from the guy that he's going to sin? That's the way you made him. It's not his fault. It's not her fault. And that's a good question. If God created me in such a way, then it's not my fault. And guess what? I have people that tell that to me. God made me have a desire to sin, and therefore I sin. God made me to have an anger problem, and therefore I'm angry. And it gets worse. God made me have a temptation to steal, and that's why I steal. And the list goes on. And the answer is, if you look carefully what he says, God doesn't say, he didn't say, God, you made me wicked. You made me like a wicked man. What does it mean, like a wicked man? Like a wicked man means that I have an urge to sin. Even though you have an urge, God gives each and every one of us the tools that we need to overcome it and not to fall for the temptations and desires that we have. Yes, God plants within each and every one of us certain temptations, things that we want to do. But ultimately, it's in our hands, and we have the power to overcome it. Then he goes on to say that there are two types of foods that people enjoy. You know, there's some people, they love sweet food. The more sugar, the more honey, they love it. And then there's other people to the other extreme. The more hot the food is, that you can't even put it in your mouth, they love it. They can't eat sweet. But the more black pepper and paprika and all those flakes, the more hot it is, the more sour it is, they love it. People love it. I'm not just talking about Mexican food, but there's all types of food like that. Some people have a desire and a lust, so to speak, and a pleasure eating sharp foods. They love it. Some people can't stand sharp foods, and some people like sweet. That's the reality of life. Right? Like some people say there's Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews. There are different foods that they eat. Although there's Sephardic Jews that like sweet and Ashkenazi Jews that like sharp. It's not, I don't mean here to, you know what I mean? There are different people that enjoy different types of foods. So what does that have to do with us? We're not giving a class on food today. And the answer is, Alter Rebbe uses this as an analogy to explain that God also has two types of pleasure. One type of pleasure God has is from the Jew. That's a sweet boy, a sweet girl. Never, ever, ever has to fight back a temptation. Is born to do everything the right way. A very good kid, you know, different types of children. Everything is fine. Never thought about making trouble. Never gave the parents or the teacher a hard time. Never ever even thought about breaking any of the rules that the Torah tells us not to do. That's one type of pleasure. And then God has another type of pleasure. And that is the sharp foods. The sharp foods represents a Jew that has a desire to sin. A hot pepper. Hot, sharp. Has a desire to sin. Has a desire to do things not the way they're supposed to. But nevertheless, despite the fact that they have the urge and the desire, they overcome their temptations and they don't do it. In many places it says that desire, the pleasure that God has from such a Jew is a lot greater from the Jew that does everything that's correct. And that's the two stories that I shared with you earlier on, that Samach said, what should I do that I have a desire to learn? I never even had this ability that you had. Or like the Rebbe told this Jew, I'm jealous from you, you have such a big test. And now that you have this test, you have to overcome it. The Talmud tells us, Lefi gam l'shichna, which means according to the strength of the camel, they put the load on the camel. If the camel cannot carry it, God wouldn't, you don't put too much weight because it's going to fall down. It says if God gives a person a challenge, the reason why God gives this individual a challenge is that because they have the strength to overcome it. If God wouldn't give you the strength, God wouldn't give you the challenge. Our rabbis tell us, whoever has a bigger animalistic soul has even a greater godly soul. And this I've seen many times. Sometimes you see people, they look like the biggest sinners, but their soul is so special. When that soul all of a sudden awakens, I see in them a beautiful soul. I see in them a beautiful neshama, a beautiful soul. Sadly, it went not the way it's supposed to, but the potential for them to be great is more than you can imagine. I was listening last week to a talk that the Rebbe gave, and the Rebbe explained what it says, that this world is really a garden of God. Well, when you walk outside, it looks like a jungle. And the answer is, that's the way it's externally. The potential that's found in everything is beautifully that could shine. Every person is a diamond that could shine. The only thing is, we gotta dig it out. You gotta bring it up. So there's two types of pleasures. Yes, it'll be easier if God would make me the sugar honey type of guy. I never have a desire to do anything wrong. I'm a chaya, easy. But this is not something that's more pressure by God. It's more precious by God. What is more precious by God? The Jew that struggles. And although they have the struggle, they do the right thing.
What if they do?
If they don't what? If they don't
do the right thing?
If they don't do the right thing, then they have to fix it. Here again, today's class is focusing on one thing. We're talking about happiness. So it's a continuation. The question is, how can I be happy if I have a temptation? That was the question. That's what we've come to address tonight. How can I be happy if I had a temptation yesterday and I overcame it? I had a temptation this morning, this afternoon, tonight, and this is going on for years. Like, enough. Either I give up and say, the heck with it, let me just do whatever I want, or I'm going to become sad. I'm going to become depressed. Why am I struggling every single day? So when our mind has the right setting, is set the right way, we look at it, this is a challenge that God gives us in order to overcome it. And the challenge is a continuous challenge. And we are like the Jews that God likes us to struggle, but to overcome it. I said earlier on, if we did something wrong, we don't go around saying, yes, life is dandy. You have to fix it. Which is not the scope of tonight's class to say how you fix when you did something wrong. What we are trying to explain is that the fact that you have a temptation to do something wrong, you are normal. The fact that you sinned, that's a problem. You should have held back. You had an urge, no problem. Then the Alter Rebbe says that a person has to learn to hold back and not do things that they want to do. For example, he says, even things that you're allowed to do. A person has to learn how to hold back, not to do everything that they want. What does it mean, even things you're allowed to? It says in the Talmud that rabbis, obviously you have to eat, because if you don't eat, you're not going to be healthy. But they used to hold back. They didn't eat, let's say everyone eats 8 o'clock in the morning, they used to eat 9 o'clock. Not that they got up 9 o'clock, but they used to hold back, not to eat exactly what they wanted to eat. You know, sometimes I go to weddings, and I'm amazed. Big doctors, lawyers, you know, all of a sudden they see the person walking around with a sushi, and they lose themselves. They charge onto the waiter coming around. Relax. Let other people get first. Don't run, wait online. And if you miss the sushi, it will be something else to eat. There's a concept that we have to learn, that we have to hold back not to do everything that we want, at least not the minute that we want. And that's why it says in the Talmud, rabbis started to train themselves that although I want to eat now, I'm going to wait a little bit. Not to starve, because you're not allowed to starve, you have to take care of your body. But not everything that I want, I should get at the moment that I want. Because if you want everything at the moment that I want it, you're never going to learn how to control yourself. You're never going to learn how to hold back, not to do what you want to do. And a Jew, not only a Jew, any person, any human being, must train themselves to hold back, to have self-control. Self-control doesn't come by itself. Self-control comes only